Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Conn'Cast Podcast. I am Finn Tumber, and today I am joined with nobody at all. It's just me and you, or me and the mic, depending on what you're listening to on. But before we get into anything, I do want to give you guys a trigger warning because I will be discussing themes surrounding suicide and other mental health issues. So viewer and listener discretion is very much advised for this episode. Let's get into it. So, for those of you that don't know, September is actually World Suicide Prevention Month, and it's also on the 10th of September, World Suicide Prevention Day. And I was actually originally rushing to do this episode. I did actually want to release this on the 10th, actually being the day, but then I thought to myself, it doesn't need to be necessarily done on that day. Suicide is something that affects us all year round, different people at different times, and it's quite a taboo subject, and I feel like we need to discuss it whenever, not just in September. So I thought to myself, I'll do this episode now. And also further to this, although it's a good thing that we have a month dedicated to suicide prevention and a day itself, suicide needs to be spoken about more. It's not slowing down. Over 800,000 people die from suicide every year, and I'm not going to stop, and we're not going to stop until that drops to zero. So I think it's very important that we do this episode. So today I am sharing with you guys a few ways to identify what suicidal thoughts might look like in people, and also ways, once you identify these, to potentially help these people. And I just want to add as well, I'm not a mental health professional. I am just Finn the human. So all of these tips that I've found and I'm going to speak about today, I found online on the internet, and these are things that I've kind of looked at and gone, yeah, I think that will help people. So please take this episode as a pinch of salt, and hopefully there'll be a few things that help you further down the line. So the first point I wanted to tackle is ways to identify warnings of suicide in people. There's a lot of things that may be warning signs. Some of these may not necessarily be warning signs of suicide. It could just be poor mental health, but it's definitely something to look out for in your friends and family and all your loved ones. Again, some people may exhibit a lot of these warning signs I'm about to discuss. Some people may not have any, but it's just really important to look out for these signs. And if you think that someone is struggling, then it's really important to identify these and help them, which I'll talk about further down in this episode. So, some warning signs could be sometimes your friends and family, your loved ones, thinking that they're a burden to people. So they may feel like that they don't want to share themselves and their thoughts because they think that people don't listen to them, they're a burden to others, and they just kind of sometimes withdraw themselves from certain social situations. Another one might be extreme mood swings. So maybe someone that it can be really happy at some point, could be really angry another really quickly, and sometimes for no logical reasoning. It could be quite irrational mood changes. Another one might be that they've got no hope for the future. They either say explicitly that they don't have any hope for the future, or they don't discuss the future. They kind of stick to themselves and what they know. So that's something else to look out for. Another one I wanted to add is passive suicide. So some people may actually talk about that they want to die. They may be talking about ways they want to die, which is obviously quite an obvious sign of suicidal thoughts. And with passive suicide, it can also be that they don't have a plan, but they want to die. And I think that's quite an important thing to pick up on. And if you know someone that has said that, or they are doing those sorts of things, you should definitely identify that and talk to them. For example, it could be implicit as well. So some people with suicidal thoughts might, not look when they cross the road, for example. It's an implicit way, but they're not planning to die, but they are just, if it happened, then that's it, and they wouldn't mind. And that's really important to pick up on if you notice that in any of your loved ones. Again, like I said, people may have a lot of these warning signs. Some people may not have any at all, but if you do notice that any of them have these signs that I've spoken about, it's really important to try and help them, which is what I'm just about to move on to. So once you've identified these warning signs in your loved ones, it's then really important to try and support them where you can. And I think when I've read online, a lot of people said the same sort of things, which are really good things. So there's one thing that I actually spoke to one of my colleagues that I work with at the library, and she said this really amazing thing actually, that it wasn't about suicide prevention, but it was more about just trying to help people in general with mental health. And it's the idea of asking someone how they are twice. So if I give you an example of what I mean with this, say I've got a friend called Fred, and I go up to Fred and I say, hi Fred, mate, how are you doing? Fred will probably 9 times out of 10 reply with something along the lines of, hi Finn, I'm okay, or I'm doing all right, subconsciously. And it's very important to realise it's a subconscious thing that I reply with sometimes, because 9 times out of 10, regardless of how my mate Fred is feeling, he could have really bad suicidal thoughts, or he could be feeling quite positive. I mean, who knows? But I would say probably 9 times out of 10, regardless of how he feels, he will reply with that subconscious reply, I'm okay, Finn. And I think most of us, I think it's the way society's been created, that we obviously don't want to be a burden to people sometimes, which is what I spoke about earlier. We don't want to put these things onto people, and I feel like in Fred's case, he may not want to open up to me like that. It's not the said thing to just open up to someone when someone asks, how are you? I understand that. But if I was to then, let's say I found a few warning signs in my mate Fred beforehand, and I went to Fred and I said, actually, Fred, how are you doing? Sometimes that flips a switch. Fred might be thinking, oh, Finn actually really cares about me. He's actually asked me, wow. And it just tricks the subconscious brain into actually talking. And it may be that Fred's okay, but it might be that he turns around to me and goes, Finn, you know what? I'm feeling really down actually. I have contemplated suicide. Let's just say that it is as like that. And it's just asking twice. It's so easy to do. And sometimes it just kind of just makes you think instead of having that subconscious reply. So give it a try. I mean, I've asked a few friends. Luckily, I think they're okay. But I have tried using the how are you twice to some people. And I'm hoping it does, will work on someone that needs it. So that's something to really pick up on. The second thing that I want to talk about, which is what most people have put on social media this month with World Suicide Prevention Month, is just asking them explicitly, Fred, let's say Fred again, Fred, I've noticed X, Y, and Z. Let's say there's some warning signs of suicidal thoughts, some warning signs that you've picked up on. You then go to Fred and say, look, I've noticed X, Y, and Z. I've noticed maybe you're looking, really tired. Has your sleep been okay? You've been withdrawing from us a little bit. I'm not saying that you do, but do you have suicidal thoughts? And I think some people, when you mention that, they sometimes think to themselves like using the word suicide actually might make them think of it more. And actually, research has proved that isn't always the case. Sometimes actually, let's say the person that you've asked does have suicidal thoughts, you asking that person, they might think, wow, he or she, whoever it is, they really care. And it's kind of like a relief that maybe because they'll know for a fact they've got suicidal thoughts. And someone asking them explicitly, do you have suicidal thoughts? It can almost be like a relief that someone almost starts to understand them. And let's say that your friend or your loved one does, have really bad, some suicidal thoughts. This is the most crucial part about trying to help them. It's just listen. That is the big key when you're talking to someone that has suicidal thoughts. It's just listening to them, no judgment. You don't need to have any advice. You don't need to talk. Because sometimes if you try to give advice, it can be quite overbearing on someone that's already feeling quite overwhelmed with mental health issues. I think the most important thing is to just sit there and just with open arms listen without any judgment or anything. And it's just letting them open the lid a little bit. I use this quite a lot. The idea of your mental health is almost like a toothpaste tube, and if you put too much pressure on without taking the lid off, the toothpaste just goes everywhere. So it's quite important to release the lid every now and then, and that's exactly what you should let your loved one do to you. Release the lid a little bit, let their emotions out, speak to them. If for any reason you think that their suicidal thoughts are very urgent, it needs immediate help, there are loads of helplines, and perhaps you need to try and encourage them eventually to maybe go to a mental health professional if it gets really bad. So that's really important as well. I also understand that a lot of places on social media, lots of accounts have said, talk to people, talk to them, say it. But I also quite understand that talking to someone about their suicidal thoughts can be quite hard on yourself, actually, and it takes a lot of courage to ask. And I just want to say, before I say anything else, well done you if you have and if you will, because it can honestly save a life talking about suicide and actually asking them, how are you doing? That can actually save a life, and I'm a strong believer in that and trying to have an intervention with it. But I do understand it's quite hard to sometimes speak to your loved one about that. It's quite a hard taboo subject to speak about to someone. So if it is hard for you and you are struggling to think, oh God, I know someone in my life that's like this, but I don't want to say it, I think sometimes it's as hard as it is to ask them to open up. If you do speak to someone, you have the courage, you pluck it up, and you do ask them, have you got suicidal thoughts? You listen to them, and they do, and they help you. That can be quite a lot of pressure on you as a person and as an individual to take on. I completely understand that. And you almost sometimes feel like they're now your responsibility, which is not the case, but it can feel like that. And I do understand how hard it can be to ask someone this. And I think in this situation, as much as it's important to help them as the individual with the suicidal thoughts, you should also prioritise yourself as well and really look after yourself. If you're struggling with having someone in your life that obviously you're feeling responsible for them, it could be an idea to seek therapy, to seek some professional support that can actually help you, or maybe anonymously speak about this person to a very, very close friend of yours who can be there to understand, and you can just kind of just speak things aloud. But it's so important that you do ask people how they're doing. It is crucial. And it's the whole reason why we do this podcast. You know, this podcast, obviously the Conn'Cast, it is in memory of my brother Connor. And it's so important because I won't get Connor back anymore. And I wish I heard this episode I'm speaking about right now 6 years ago. Would it have changed anything with Connor? I don't know. I honestly don't know. But I know for a fact that although Connor is now no longer with us, unfortunately, there's so many more lives that can be saved. Just because one light's gone doesn't mean so many more won't be, right? It's so important we crack on with this. You know, suicide, like I said earlier, does not sleep. It's happening 24/7 around the clock, and we need to crack on with it. It may also be that the person that you're speaking to that has suicidal thoughts may say that they have suicidal thoughts, but they may not be ready to open up about it. And that's fine. There should be no pressure to get them to speak up. The fact that you're there is very important, but I think the crucial thing to make sure that you do is keep the door open. So if someone has got suicidal thoughts, you make sure that you know that you are there if you need them. If you can't be there for whatever reason, it could be worth trying to get them and encourage them to seek professional help as well, especially if you think it is urgent. But as long as you can be, and you can be there for them, keep the door open. It's so important. And if you are sitting here with suicidal thoughts, there may be a reason that you're watching this or listening to this. But if you are sat here listening, and even if you're not listening, I love you and you matter. As much life may be looking bleak at the moment, I promise you there is light at the end of the tunnel. I care about you, you matter, and this world is a better place for having you in it. So please, please, please do not give up, okay? Because it's so important that you stay here for all of us. And if you feel like you need professional help as well, if talking to me isn't enough, or a loved one, if you need professional help, I will be putting some helplines in the description, such as Calm or Campaign Against Living Miserably, or a text service Shout, which I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I will be putting it all in the description. If you do feel like you need urgent professional help, please use it if you do need to. And if you feel like you just need to speak to someone, message me. I promise you I will look at it, especially if it's urgent. I know how bad my replies can be, as people have joked about in the past. But please do message me, okay? It's so important that you stay here. You matter and I love you. So thanks for watching or listening, guys. I really appreciate it. If you want more of these sorts of podcasts with suicide or any other theme that you want, please do message in. I'll take any feedback you've got about this. But I hope you've enjoyed this. And before I forget, sorry, I always forgot about this. So my good friend, I hope you don't mind mentioning your name, Luke Gilbert, actually had this amazing idea for these podcasts. So every single week, every guest that comes on, we will ask them what song has helped you through some really dark times in your mental health. What song really means a lot to you? And they'll give us a song, hopefully. Well, they don't have to if they want to, but every single song that we get given by a guest, we put onto a playlist called the Conn'Cast playlist, which is called at the moment, which I will be linking in this post on Instagram. And I think it'd just be quite a cool way for all of us just to keep a log of all these songs that have helped different people through different times, and hopefully it helps you when you listen to it. So, I mean, I'm not a guest, I'm the host, but I guess I can do my one. I should have thought about this. Yeah, I think there's only going to be one, actually. So my song that I'm going to add to the playlist, which will be at the top, will be Mac Miller, Good News. It's a song that, if you haven't listened to it already, it's beautiful. It's one of my favourite songs of all time. And it's just about Mac Miller, if you know who Mac is. Just talking about his mental health and quite deeply, but also, so I think some people think it's quite a depressing song, but it's quite liberating for me. He's just being so honest about how he feels, and I think that's quite a beautiful thing with music, to turn that into that sort of thing. So that's my song for this week. I'll be adding it to the playlist, and I'll also get my other guests from previous weeks to also add theirs in. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Again, like I said, I love you. Thank you for watching or listening, and I hope you all have an amazing rest of your week. And until next Sunday, goodbye.